Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is July the 24th, 2026. I'm continuing with my discussion on the Odyssey, and something I wanted to point out, which it appears Christopher Nolan's movie, The Odyssey, which is a block, you know, it's a blockbuster, it's a box office hit, but despite the mixed bag of reviews that it's receiving, I wanted to point out that Christopher Nolan appears to have understated or minimized the intelligence of Odysseus. So the Odyssey is you can view it like a second part, a continuation of the Iliad. The Iliad is the story of the Trojan War. They have two different heroes. The hero of the Iliad, right, the Trojan War, was Achilles. Achilles couldn't be more unlike, couldn't be more different than from Odysseus, right? They're two different people. Achilles, by the way, is a demigod, right? Achilles is the son of a human king, Peleus, and a goddess, Thetis. So um, she dips him when he's born into the river Styx to a mystic, a magic river to make him fully immortal. However, she's holding on to his heel, and that portion is not touched by the river to make him completely immortal. So everywhere else he's immortal. So in the Iliad, the focus on Achilles's sort of superhuman strength, right? He's the strongest, he's the fastest, he's the bravest of the Greek warriors, right, who fight in Troy. He also has this all-consuming wrath, right? So Achilles, in modern speak, is basically like all brawn, right? Like the jock, all brawn, and he's very, of course, very arrogant, right? He's very proud of his prowess. In contrast, uh, Odysseus is all brain, right? So that's the contrast, right? The Iliad, you can consider it like about the brawn of Achilles, the supernatural strength, bravery, speed of Achilles as the greatest warrior, right? Amongst the Greeks. The Greeks are called the Achaeans or the Danaans. The Odyssey is about Odysseus. Odysseus is trying to make his way back home, but of course, his brains get him into trouble. So understand what the Odyssey is all about, things that are central, right? If you read the book, you'll understand it, right? You'll see it. I guess, America is rather anti-intellectual, right? And uh, America likes things to do with muscle, right? Big, the big fights. Because I've been seeing some of the reviews, and they're talking about their disappointment in the fight scenes, right? So those are the things that they're focusing on rather than the storytelling of Odysseus's wit. There's one important fight scene. The only important fight scene in the book is the in the slaughter of the suitors, right? In the final act, the slaughter of the suitors, when Odysseus finally gets back home and he massacres the suitors. I'm going to do a video and focus on Odysseus's return because there's a lot to unpack in that regarding the book. But it's a great book to read. It's a great story. Again, it's often called the greatest story ever told. But I wanted to emphasize that distinction, right? The brawn of Achilles in the Iliad, uh, as opposed to the brain of Odysseus in the Odyssey. That's central, right? That's central. And you see his patron god, goddess Athena, praise him, the Odysseus of the nimble wits, right? Odysseus of the nimble wits. She praises him, calls him that, Odysseus of the nimble wits. Nimble wits. They're always pointing out about how clever he is. By the way, Athena is god of war and god of wisdom, god of strategic warfare and god of wisdom, and she's his patron. So you see Odysseus, despite his wit, despite his intelligence and his cunning, he can't outwit the gods, right? So you see, he's held captive by Calypso for 7 years, and Poseidon is giving him all the perils at sea, and he still has to rely on the gods. So the gods toy with him, they manipulate him. So I'm going to do another video and focus on that, the interaction between the Greeks and the Greek gods, right? Because again, there was a bit of presentism and anachronism in the filming and in the way the movie's been critiqued, and in the filming itself, right? It appears that Christopher Nolan, who's British and probably as agnostic as the Brits are today, I guess he's American as well, and America is becoming increasingly is rather, for the most part is agnostic as well. He doesn't focus on that anthropomorphic interaction between the Greek gods and the humans, which is very pronounced, very prominent, it's salient throughout their writings, right? I've done a video explaining the classics, so you can watch that video and to just get a better grasp of the classics. But the high point, and this Christopher Nolan leaves out again, right? He modifies the interaction between Odysseus and the Cyclops, right? How Odysseus, how he's truly blind while they're in the cave, right? Christopher Nolan apparently alters it that he shoots Odysseus, blinds him when they're out of the cave, that he's already made it out of the cave, and he just kind of has to stick it to him and shoots an arrow into his eye, and that's how he's blinded. Nolan doesn't focus on when Odysseus lies to him, he deceives him and tells him his name is nobody. This is very important because it highlights Odysseus' intelligence, and it's also a turning point. It's a watershed in the story, because if Odysseus hadn't revealed to him that, okay, he was the one who blinded him, if Odysseus hadn't shown him that, okay, he's Odysseus, he's the one who blinded him, then the Cyclops would not have known his name and asked his father Poseidon to curse him, and that was the source of his perils, right? His travails, wandering the seas for 10 years, unable to make it back home. So that was the hubris there. But again, the intelligence of Odysseus is very crucial, because again, there would have been no success in the Trojan War without Odysseus's intelligence. Even though Odysseus is not the hero of the Iliad, that's the Trojan War. But I've done an earlier video in which, and while Homer doesn't state this in the Iliad or in the Odyssey, because the Odyssey sometimes does flashbacks, right? The Greek mythology, right? The canon of Greek mythology, their classics, the other tragedians, they point out that Odysseus was sought out specifically by Agamemnon, who was the chief of the army of the Greeks, right? It was the most powerful of the Greek kings then, and his brother Menelaus, who was king of Sparta and the husband of the abducted Helen of Troy. And so they went to seek him out with Palamedes, and that was where Odysseus pretended like he'd gone crazy, so that he could abscond. He could, he was trying to malinger. He was trying to, avoid, joining the army. But they needed him, and they sort of, outed him, showed that he wasn't crazy, and so he had to go with them. And so when he went, it was Odysseus that devised the stratagem of using the Trojan horse, using the Trojan horse to steal into the into the impregnable walls of Troy, and ultimately massacring the whole entire city when they were asleep. So Odysseus's intelligence is very crucial, and it gets him into trouble. So Odysseus And apart from being intelligent, but you could see that even though he suffers for that moment of hubris, right? When he tells the Cyclops what his true name was, and he's screaming boastfully, bragging, saying, "If anybody asks you who destroyed you, right? Who blinded you, tell them it was I, Odysseus, the sacker of Troy, the destroyer of cities," right? So Odysseus was very arrogant. He wanted to let him know how intelligent he was and how he'd outwitted him in his own home, in his own cave, in his own lair, right? So in his own territory. So and unfortunately for Odysseus, uh, uh, since the Cyclops now knew his name, then he was able to appeal to his father, the sea god, who was also the brother of Zeus, Poseidon, to curse Odysseus, to avenge him. And of course, that was the beginning, the source of all of Odysseus's troubles, on the seas. So Odysseus's intelligence again is very crucial, very important, and Odysseus's self-restraint, right? He's very judicious, and he's actually rather humble, and you see it in another. There's another portion of the book that Christopher Nolan leaves out. That was his time on the island of Scheria, in the land of the Phaeacians, right? So the final in his final place of captivity was when he was shipwrecked again, and he was all alone, and another goddess helps him, and he washes ashore on the island of the Phaeacians, and he's completely naked, and the daughter of the Phaeacians, the daughter of the king of the Phaeacians, that's the daughter of King Alcinous and Arete. Their daughter was the beautiful young Princess Nausicaa. She favors him, and she clothes him and tells him that okay, they can't walk into the city together because it wasn't proper for that time, right? That was not their custom, and so but she advised him that Odysseus should seek protection from her mother, the queen. And you can see how humble Odysseus was. So even though he was a king, right, he goes into the palace, and when he sees Queen Arete, right, the wife of King Alcinous, he kneels down before her, throws himself, on her knees, grabs her knees, in entreating her to give him, protection and hospitality, which she did. They protected him. So you can see Odysseus's humility, right? He's humble, and he doesn't reveal that who he is, that he's a king. It takes a while. There's a blind bard, and unfortunately, apparently Christopher Nolan leaves this out as well. And this is a very significant aspect of the book, because Homer channels himself into this portion, into this piece, right? Because there's a blind bard who's singing on a lyre, right? He's playing a lyre, and he's singing of the Trojan War, singing of the famous rivalry between Odysseus, Achilles, the Trojan War, just singing and talking about the great Odysseus, how clever he was, and all that. And there he was with them. He was sitting, humbly eating with them. He was actually the person that was the most famous man amongst the Greeks, that living man amongst the Greeks, right? Achilles was dead. He was in the old place of the underworld. He was dead. Because Achilles had chosen in his brashness to have a short life, but a glorious one, right? Very short life, but a glorious one. And that was what happened. He died, right? Quite young. But Odysseus, who was judicious, who was humble, he wanted a stable family life. And eventually he did. He lived on to be 70. He did go back. He succeeded and went back to Ithaca and resumed as king. And he lived his, into his old age. I'm going to do a video and discuss that in a separate video. But Odysseus is humble, right? He wants the humble things of a regular man, right? You could see that, and he's praised by the gods for this, because you can see when he's held captive by Calypso, right, the goddess Calypso, she offers him immortality, right, that he would always be young, or if he married her, but he refused. He just wanted his wife back, his mortal wife back. He chose to remain human. And so you see Odysseus is judicious. He shows the self-restraint that Achilles doesn't show in the Iliad. So this was a very important part of the Odyssey, Odysseus's intelligence. And I'm going to do another video and talk more about his interaction with the gods. He's actually very humble with the gods, except for this one, this one part of show of hubris after he had blinded the Cyclops, even after he had successfully escaped and evaded his captivity. And he'd used a brilliant strategy when the Cyclops asked him, "What's your name?" Right? And he told him, "My name's Nobody." And after he escapes and gets out of the cave, the Cyclops who'd been blinded by the men they used a sharpened, heated stake to blind him in his one single eye. And then he's screaming, and then his brothers hear, and they're asking who's hurting him. And he thinks Odysseus' name is Nobody because Odysseus had deceived him and told him his name was Nobody. And so the Cyclops is foolishly shouting, "Nobody, nobody, nobody's hurting me." And so his brothers ignore him, think he's just screaming for the sake of screaming. So you see the brilliance of Odysseus, but Odysseus just had to stick it to him after he escaped and rushed off onto his ship. And he screamed back at him that, hey, that if anybody wants to know who outwitted you, who blinded you, who destroyed you, tell them it was I, Odysseus, the sacker of Troy, the destroyer of cities. And so you see that moment of hubris, and it's a turning point, it's a watershed, and the Cyclops knows his name, and then he calls on his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus, and Odysseus is cursed to wander the seas. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.